President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi concludes a significant visit to Denmark, where he met with Danish officials, including Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen and Parliament Speaker, strengthening bilateral ties. This marks a new phase in Egypt-Denmark relations, now elevated to a strategic partnership. Egypt today has reported that President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's historic visit to Denmark aims to strengthen bilateral ties, marking a new chapter in Egypt-Denmark relations. Ambassador Mohammed Karim Sharif highlighted the growing momentum in various sectors, particularly in the green transition and climate change. Denmark views Egypt as a key partner in these efforts, with Danish companies eager to invest in Egypt's renewable energy sectors such as wind and solar power. Sharif also emphasized Egypt's role as a strategic partner in the Middle East, particularly in addressing regional crises, including those in Sudan and the coastal nations of Africa. Providing more analysis about this special visit of Egyptian President to Denmark, we're joined from Cairo by Mr. Ashraf Al-Ashri, the editor-in-chief of Al-Ahram newspaper. Good evening to you and welcome to Qnews. Now, how will President Sisi's visit to Denmark enhance bilateral cooperation, particularly in green transition and renewable energy?
My greetings to you and to your viewers. This visit has got a lot of successes, and because President Sisi's visit to Denmark is the first of an Egyptian president to Denmark, and it was full of many successes, and that has been planned with for a number of files to be covered on the political, economic, and other levels, including the renewable energy, clean energy, and green transition. And it will be opening more horizons for more successes in the relations between Egypt and Denmark, especially that the visits of President Sisi to Denmark and his meeting with the King, the Prime Minister, and the different officials has tackled all the trade and economic and commercial issues, as well as the issues of energy, especially the clean energy, transportation, and maritime navigation. This will lead more emergence of better relations between Egypt and Denmark, which will play a key role in building more partnerships between the two countries, especially that there is great welcome for the visit of President Sisi's visit to Denmark, and the agreements were signed, and elevating the relations to a strategic partnership will get more collaboration between the two countries, to as well as reaching full understanding on the political issues, including that President Sisi has explained to the Prime Minister of Denmark all the Egyptian perspectives about the issues of the Middle East, Gaza war, and explaining what Egypt has been doing to save the Palestinian people, and the most recent of which was the latest December 2nd conference for humanitarian aid to Gaza. And the Egyptian role is a pillar for peace and stability in the region, and this is helping to get more done for the Arab and African interests.
Right. What are the strategic benefits Egypt can expect from upgrading its relations with Denmark to a strategic partnership?
For sure, great benefits are awaiting Egypt regarding supporting the relations on the political, economic, and developmental relations, and opening more opportunity for the Danish investments in Egypt, including maritime transportation and the collaboration on green economy, renewable economy, especially that Egypt has been hosting the COP27 a couple of years ago, and Egypt has been advocating the clean energy and green hydrogen, and this will give an opportunity for the Denmark Denmark companies that work on their renewable energy, especially that there is an agreement has been signed today for the strategic partnership in the field of energy. And this will pour more investments from Denmark to Egypt, and it will lead to more presence of Denmark in many files in Egypt. And as President Sisi said, Egypt has taken very important economic steps to improve the climate of investment and played a role in enhancing the investments. And these relations between Egypt and Denmark will be flourish and fruitful in the upcoming period and open horizons for more cooperation between Egypt and the EU, because Egypt is steadily working for a stronger economy and stronger relations to face the current challenges and paving the way for better economic and investment environment in Egypt. So there has been a lot of advancements and successes happening, and this will give more rise for the better relations between Egypt and Denmark, in addition to the full harmony of the positions regarding the political positions, to see some sustainable solutions for all the problems in the Middle East. Especially that Denmark has taken positive positions to the issues of the Middle East, and Denmark recognizes the Egyptian pivotal role in de-escalating tensions in the Middle East and calling for de-escalation in Gaza and the Egyptian intervention in different places.
Now, how significant is President Sisi's European tour in strengthening Egypt's role regionally and globally?
For sure, this tour by President Sisi has been well prepared, and this is the first visit of an Egyptian president to Denmark. For 90 years, no Egyptian president visited Denmark. So when President Sisi makes this visit, this in itself is opening big horizon for the Egyptian-Danish relations on the political level, economic level, commercial level, cultural level, in addition to the strategic partnership agreement. This is the biggest agreement ever for two countries to strengthen the relations between the two of them and to get them to be strategically working and cooperating. And this will be the solid core for the economic, commercial investment relations between Egypt and Denmark in the future. Egypt is highly recognized as the central axial state in the region for Denmark regarding investment, regarding bringing the giant Danish companies of maritime navigation and the green economy in order to use the opportunities in Egypt. There is a lot of benefits of such relations, and a lot of benefits and a lot of successes have been achieved by President Sisi during this visit by him to Denmark, and he has put these relations to a course for more evolution and development to the future, for a better future between Egypt and Denmark. And this will build better investment collaboration and better investment partnerships between Danish and Egyptian partners. And this will open the road for more European-Egyptian cooperation. And Denmark will play an important role. The king in Denmark, the political leadership in Denmark have praised the visit by President Sisi, and they cherish this visit as an opening for a wider path for cooperation between the two countries.
Yes, indeed. That was Ashraf Al-Ashri, the editor-in-chief of Al-Ahram newspaper from Cairo. Many thanks for you and for your insights. Now, amidst escalating clashes in Syria, armed factions have seized key areas including Homs and Daraa, drawing regional powers into a delicate geopolitical balancing act. With the Syrian government's grip weakening, the situation remains fluid, raising concerns over the future of the conflict. The UN has reported that the recent escalation in northwest Syria has displaced over 280,000 people, worsening an already critical humanitarian crisis. With winter approaching, the UN warns that up to 1.5 million more could be displaced, amplifying the demand for aid and food resources. In Lebanon, over 600,000 people have begun returning to their homes following a ceasefire, following the threat of unexploded ordnance, particularly in agricultural areas, poses significant risks, with calls for urgent demining efforts to protect returning families. The funding gap for the Syria humanitarian response plan remain alarming large, leaving millions in desperate need of aid. Providing more analysis about the most recent updates concerning the rising escalation in Syria, we're joined from Cairo by Dr. Mohammed Osman, an international relations specialist. Good evening to you, Dr. Osman.
Thank you for having me, Mona. Good evening.
Thank you so much for being with us on Qnews. And after the fall of Aleppo and Hama, armed groups are marching onwards to Homs, threatening Syria's third largest city, and are even reported to have reached the countryside near the capital. Is the Syrian government on the brink of a collapse?
Thank you, Mona, for having me. Of course, Homs is probably now the most strategically important city inside Syria. It lies right on the intersection between the capital, Damascus, and the Syrian coast, the provinces of Ladiqiyah and Tartus, which means if they capture Homs, Damascus will be isolated from the coastal area and will be deprived from any land support from the Russian bases that are located and situated on the Syrian coast. So the Battle of Homs will probably determine the fate of the Syrian government, and I do not think this is an overestimation or an exaggeration, unfortunately. Right now, Syrian rebels are attacking the Homs governorate. They have not captured the city yet. However, we have seen reports of the Syrian army, unfortunately, withdrawing from many positions with minimal resistance. And this raises very genuine concerns, as these armed factions, which include radical terrorist elements that are classified as terrorists by international organizations, are among the ranks of these movements. So the fate of Syria is at hand, and the Syrian government is on the brink of collapse, unfortunately, as things stand.
With the cities of Dir'a and Qnews and several southern border crossings captured by those armed groups, how would this impact regional stability?
Of course, it will have a disastrous impact on regional stability if things go completely out of control inside Syria. The armed factions and the militants now control the entire border, almost the entire border with Jordan, and they also control the border between Syria and the occupied Syrian Golan Heights, which are occupied by Israel, of course, with the capture of Qnews and the capture of Dir'a and most of the province of Dir'a, which is a very dangerous development. And now it is reported that these militants have reached, or they claim to have reached, the southern countryside surrounding the capital, Damascus, which is a very a dangerous development. And what even makes it more dangerous is that the governorates of Dir'a and Suwaidat and the city of Qnews were basically surrendered by Syrian government forces without any meaningful resistance, even though they possess the numbers and the capabilities and the equipment to put up a fight. So again, this raises very legitimate questions about Syria's ability to continue this war to defend the unity of its own territories.
Now, can Baghdad's ministerial summit and the tripartite meeting of the Asitana framework ministers in Doha serve to affect the trajectory of the crisis?
Unfortunately, it's too late for any political process. Unfortunately, right now, as things stand, the battlefield situation is escalating, and the events are developing very rapidly. It seems that any political gestures or plans or settlements will be undercut by the rapid nature of the battlefield development. So I think that the Astana framework or the tripartite meeting of the foreign ministers in Baghdad, or even the discussions happening today in Doha between many Arab countries and Russia and Turkey and Qatar and others and Iran, I think it's any political settlement might be reached within light of what the battlefield will result in.
Now, Dr. Osman, Iran and Russia's relative absence on this battlefield, this is really raising serious questions. Has Syria been left on its own or to its own devices?
So it seems, unfortunately, Mona. So it seems Russia firmly controls its bases and its regions of influence inside Syria on the Syrian coast, and it seems that the militants are not attacking these areas in order not to provoke a heavy-handed Russian response. Russia did carry out several airstrikes in support of the Syrian government and the Syrian army. However, they are not nearly as with the same intensity and the same amount as it used to be, for example, in 2016, 17, and 18, for example. However, it's very interesting because according to Bloomberg and many other sources, the Russian government, when the Syrian government requested military aid from Russia, the Russians informed them that they are ready to give them aid on condition that their army does not withdraw and surrender strategic positions without a fight. And they told them that they're not willing to do your own fighting, basically, in layman's terms. We cannot help you. So I think that's
very briefly, Dr. Osman, what or how can this serve interests of other players in the region?
Of course, Israel has the most to benefit out of this right now. The Syrian government and the collapse of the Syrian state, potential collapse of the Syrian state, is within the interest of the Israeli state, as we all know, because Syria was and still is a staunch ally of Iran and Hezbollah, the main opponents of Israel on that front, and the collapse of the Syrian government will serve to sever the land bridge between Iran and Hezbollah, which might even allow Israel to continue or resume once more its war in Lebanon to completely destroy and incapacitate Hezbollah. So we are poised for much more instability in the future and potentially more Israeli aggression in Lebanon and even in Syria.
It's very clear. Dr. Mohammed Osman, an international relations specialist from Cairo, thank you so much for your insights, the very fruitful insights here. And moving on, as the Russia-Ukraine conflict intensifies, Russia moves to deploy missiles in Belarus while Kyiv ramps up domestic arms production. With the West pledging massive aid, the conflict global implications continue to unfold, raising fears of escalating violence and strategic shifts. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is optimistic about developing a joint strategy for Ukraine with US President-elect Donald Trump, stressing the importance of Ukrainian input in decisions. The Guardian reported that Scholz also ruled out sending Taurus missiles to Ukraine, citing the risk of escalating the conflict. In the EU defense chief, Andris Kabilis, called for a 500 billion euros investment to strengthen defenses against Russia, despite Trump's uncertainty over US commitment to European security. Kabilis emphasized Europe's need for self-sufficiency. Additionally, Putin announced plans to deploy new hypersonic missiles in Belarus by next year, heightening tensions. Providing more analysis about the latest updates in Russia-Ukraine conflict, joining us from Moscow, Olga Krasniak, an international relations professor. Good evening and welcome on Qnews. Now, Dr. Krasniak, with Russia deploying missiles in Belarus, how does this shift the balance of power in Eastern Europe?
Well, I think so. The balance now is in place because Russia's decision, together with Belarus, to put some intercontinental ballistic missile to the territory of Belarus, it was the response, the answer of the same decision happened between the United States and Germany. When now the Germany is not a nuclear power, but on the territory of Germany, now we have so they have the same intercontinental ballistic missiles, or maybe they have a short range or middle range. Does not matter. They can reach Russia. It's very short proximity, and in this case, so we are talking about the balance. But on a broader scale, definitely we're talking about escalation. Also, it's not a new situation considering some historical examples, because everything related to the arms race, nuclear arms race, it is something which were very well familiar during the Cold War period.
Now, Dr. Krasniak, from your point of view, the continued U.S. military aid, how is it significant in shaping Ukraine's ability to sustain its defense?
Well, I believe Ukraine has no capability to sustain its defense because it's totally dependent on American and European and military help and financial help. I believe that Ukraine is a failed state because it's incapable to provide its people, to provide its defense or anything. And we cannot even talk about Ukrainian sovereignty because the government of Ukraine even cannot make its own decisions regarding its foreign and domestic policies without consulting with Americans. I'm strongly believing that Ukraine has no capability to provide its own needs.
Now, what do recent advances in eastern Ukraine suggest about Russia's strategy in the ongoing war?
If we're talking about the eastern Ukraine, maybe we should talk about the Russians, the territories which are now not just only controlled by Russia, but they are part of the Russian territory. And we see Russia is investing a lot of money and resources to rebuild this territory. And economically, of course, it's a certain burden, but at the same time, it's a huge investment in people capacity, in people's life who are Russian people speaking the Russian language and always been turning towards Russia because historically it's Russian territory. And Russia is not just only capable, but is willing to continue this line.
Now, from your point of view, how do escalating tensions between Russia and Ukrainian cities affect the civilians and the civilian morals, and definitely the international response?
Well, unfortunately, while at the time of military conflict, some people are affected, negatively affected, and of course we have to admit it. On the other hand, when we're talking about Russia, when it aims somewhere it targets not just on, it doesn't target people's, it doesn't target cities. It targets certain objects related to logistics or military infrastructure, so some industrial objects. So it's not definitely about people. And Russia is very careful just choosing its strategic aims. But from some time to time, so we see how people are negatively affected. So well, it's a side effect of a military conflict.
Now, how could the EU's potential defense overhaul impact its position in the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
European Union, as well as Ukraine, but on a lower extent, to lesser extent, is also dependent on the United States, not economically, but in making some foreign policy decisions. And European Union, in this case, now probably in a position to make certain decisions regarding like a possible change of American attitude towards supplying Ukraine with weapons and with finances, with everything. But unfortunately, or maybe unfortunately for European countries, we cannot talk about their even own sovereignty because definitely in the last decades they became dependent in foreign policy decisions on the United States.
Right, that was Olga Krasniak, an international relations professor from Moscow. We thank you so much for your insights here, and I guess that wraps up our episode today for In Focus. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.